Welcome back to part 3 of Inclusion in Action webinar series with Mary Damaris. Today we're talking about peer mentoring in the high schools, and we are so happy that you're going to be here to join us for this last portion. If you haven't had a chance to watch the other two this series, we encourage you to go back and take a look at part 1, which is an overview of peer mentoring, or part 2, dedicated to K through 8 schools. All right, and with that, I will tell you a little bit about Porter Charities. Again, we're a nonprofit in Northern Virginia dedicated to inclusive Catholic education and meaningful employment for our young adults and children with intellectual and developmental disabilities. What we strive to do is to create a culture of belonging. We do this through our support for Catholic education, for meaningful employment, and then community. And part of that community outreach is webinars such as this, for not only our community in Northern Virginia, but anywhere else. And with that, we will let Mary take. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Carmen. So like Carmen said, my name is Mary Damaris, and I am the founder of Catholic Inclusion Consulting. I have 10 years of, I was a special educator for 10 years, and now I consult with schools who are interested in utilizing the peer mentor model to be more inclusive of students with intellectual and developmental disabilities. I've spoken on the topic of peer mentoring and inclusion at the National Catholic Education Association Conference, Council for Exceptional Children, and the Beyond Inclusion Conference as well. I absolutely love talking about Catholic education and inclusion and how we can make our Catholic schools more inclusive for students with intellectual disabilities. And I love talking all things peer mentoring. So if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. The bit.ly link here will take you directly to my contact page on my website, or you can shoot me an email, mary@catholicinclusion.com. Now, we talked or Carmen also just mentioned in this 3-part webinar series, talking about the peer mentor overview, what peer mentoring is and how it works, some research behind it. The second part was elementary schools, peer mentoring at the elementary schools. And today is going to be peer mentors in the high school setting and what that looks like. So our agenda for today, talking about what peer mentoring is, a very high level overview, because we did talk about this in the first webinar. And then how does it work in the high school setting? How do we set up a peer mentor model? How do we select peer mentors? How do we match the peers? How do we manage the process? Because at the high school level, there may be quite a few students who have intellectual disabilities receiving special education services in your Catholic school that you're utilizing a peer mentor model. That's a lot of humans to manage. So talking through how we manage that process as well. So what is peer mentoring? I like to use, I should say, the term partners in learning as well for peer mentoring. Students are working together to learn, and they're approximately at the high school level, they're approximately the same age, within 4 years of each other. The student without a disability, the mentor, is attending a class, and their sole role in that class is to facilitate learning and helping their peer. They are not taking the class, so they are not responsible for the material. It is an elective class that they can enroll in, but they are not taking, so if they're mentoring in biology, they're not taking biology while they're trying to mentor and support their peer. Their sole role in that class is to help facilitate that learning and help their peer access content. Now, peer mentors are trained at the beginning of the year. So before the school year starts, there is training, and we'll go over what training looks like. And throughout the year, they are also supported by the Director of Special Education Services or a special education teacher. So if there's any issues that may arise or any concerns that students may have, they have a point person to go to. And there may be some sort of mentoring model in place now that your school may have. So let's take a look at what schools have, or when you're thinking about this, take a look at what your school has now and see how might we be able to change this or build upon it, or if this is something completely new that we should start separate. And peer mentoring is an increasingly popular avenue for providing a Catholic inclusive education for students with intellectual disabilities. And it has been awesome to see this. Years ago, I was a peer mentor in my high school, which is many, many years ago, and to see how many high schools now it has grown to around the country is fantastic and really, really exciting. So we can be more inclusive in our educational opportunities for students with intellectual disabilities. Peer mentoring facilitates belonging. So rather than having an adult, such as a para or a one-to-one aide, providing support for a student, peers can be utilized. And peers are not going to be the ones, doing personal care or hygiene or any of that. They're not making the modifications. Like I've said before, they're there to simply facilitate learning and helping provide some one-to-one. So like, what page are we on in the book? Let me explain this concept in a different way. Let's, if we're recognizing, or they may recognize that the student may need a quick brain reset. Let's go take a quick drink of water. Let's take a little quick break and come back. They can help facilitate the student to be successful in that class, but the teacher is the one that's going to be doing a lot of the heavy lifting with making the modifications. But going back to not having a one-to-one aide there necessarily, that's an adult, there's going to be much more, many more opportunities, I should say, for organic conversations to happen with other peers in the class when it's a peer pair together, not a student with an adult. Excuse me. So the benefits, as you can see here, there are numerous benefits for students specifically with disabilities, students without disabilities, and for students who are included, who have intellectual disabilities in an inclusive environment at the high school level. It is a strong indicator for success in post-secondary opportunities and independent living. So obviously we want that for all of our students, but it's, just another reason that we should be inclusive. Not only is this, what we're called to do as Catholics, the research is also showing us that this is a really great opportunity for students with intellectual disabilities and developmental disabilities to then have success later on in life as well. And for the benefits for students without disabilities, they learn about people and their differences and about disabilities and understanding that disabilities are part of who we are as humans, and hopefully taking this experience that they've had in high school and taking it to the next level once they leave college into their careers. So if they become priests, doctors, lawyers, can they take their experience, and if they ever encounter somebody in their professional world, think back on that experience, say like, oh, I remember, I'm not afraid necessarily to have this encounter. And I know that maybe this person might just need a little bit more time to think or process, things like that. So hopefully what we are building is a more inclusive world by providing this opportunity to be inclusive in our high schools. So the different players here for successful inclusion, administration 100% has to be on board. They're going to be in charge of the hires, the professional development, the conferences that teachers can go to, supporting teachers and getting this up and running. So they need to be 100% on board, and they are the ones who really will be spearheading and communicating with the larger school community about how this works. And they're also in charge of hires and making sure the right people are put in place from a hiring and an HR perspective. Parents, very important, obviously. As Catholics, we believe they're the primary educators of their children. So we want to be in the school, be in communication with them. Gen ed teacher and special ed teacher will have a very strong working relationship. So the special ed teacher can be able to provide some support to the gen ed teacher when they are trying to figure out how to make some modifications for the student with an intellectual disability in their class. A lot of times gen ed teachers have not had experience making modifications for students with ID or developmental disabilities, and they might have a lot of questions and some hesitations at the beginning. So the director of special education or the special ed teacher can really work with the gen ed teacher in addition to professional development that administration is providing too. So lots of kind of overlap there, but making sure that there is support for the gen ed teacher too when they are initially trying to figure out how do we make modifications, how do we make our content accessible to the students. And then we have the peer mentors who sign up for the class and students with disabilities who are there to participate fully in the class with a modified curriculum. So setting up the peer mentoring program or the peer mentor model here. So responsibilities of the peer mentors, they are a model for behavior, uniform, following the rules, and making some like on the fly modifications to the assignment to make them more accessible. So this is not making full-blown modifications. It's not the teacher saying, here's the chapter, teach your mentee. It's not that. The teacher is responsible for creating appropriate assignments, and the peer mentor helps facilitate that learning. It might be rephrasing things or taking a whiteboard and explaining something out, drawing it out, using different post-it notes, making flashcards, whatever that may be. They're helping their peer to access the content, and they're in no way responsible for grading, assessments, discipline, or personal care. I want to make that very clear. They are high schoolers, and that leads me to this next piece here. They're not colleagues, and confidentiality is huge and extraordinarily important. There's no need to share a diagnosis with information with them at any point. What the peer mentors need is to understand how a student learns, and is that probably through I'm not multimedia. I'm blanking out what multi is. My goodness. So tactile, visual, writing things out. That's what the peer mentors need to know, how the student learns best and how can they help support that student to become successful. They may encounter things like what a student gets on an assessment, or if a student has a really hard time transitioning and an unexpected behavior occurs. We want to tell our peers that that's all considered confidential and it's not to be shared or publicized broadly. We really want to honor the dignity of their mentee and help them to be successful, and that is helping them get through if behavior happens, helping them kind of get through that, but also helping get the right adults in place to help support them. Class options. So in the high school setting, we can offer peer mentoring for credit, or for just on a volunteer basis, not for credit. For credit, there can be assignments involved. So this could be, having a discussion board. It could be papers, projects, things about special education, about disabilities, about advocacy groups, about post-secondary opportunities, what the work outlook looks like for people with intellectual disabilities. So there are assignments outside of the mentoring duties. If students would not like to take it for credit, they will just be mentoring during their assigned mentoring time and have no other assignments as well. One thing to consider is that for credit, if you have students who are taking all AP classes, taking a college credit course, which typically peer mentoring is, could actually bring down their GPA even if they get an A in it. So keeping that in mind, if students are very high achieving and are taking all AP classes, we don't want to be bringing down their GPA even if they get an A in this class. So just something to keep in mind. So the process for selecting mentors, there's an application. So asking some questions. Why are you interested in becoming a mentor? Have you had any experience in supporting somebody with a disability previously? And then just asking about their interests, and then courses that they would like to be a mentor in. If they have a really high interest in math or science, seeing if we could work in a pairing there, that's awesome. It's not always going to work. Or if somebody is super interested in baseball and you have a student who's going to need a peer mentor who's also very interested in baseball, seeing if we can match those two together. It's not always going to work, but to see if we can to the best of our ability. And then also teacher recommendations. So once you get the list of those who have applied, taking that list to the teachers who will have students with intellectual disabilities in their class and ask them, hey, these are the students who have applied. Have you had this student before? If you have a really awesome relationship with them or they did really well in your class, this might be a good match in general to have them in that specific class. So talking to the teachers and getting some input from them as well. Some considerations, like I said previously, interest, and then schedule. How is the master schedule has to come out before you can make any of these decisions. And that is you're moving. There's lots of post-it notes involved. If I have done this before, there's lots of post-it notes and lots of color coding on Excel spreadsheets to try to make this work. But you might need to just get a little bit flexible. And then if peer mentors have a strong academic achievement in a certain class, that is going to be very beneficial to have that person. Let's say if the student like absolutely loves science and is very good in science, that they would be an awesome person to have in a science class as a mentor, if at all possible as well. So as we manage the process, the first thing we do, we get after the application, we have the training. That support throughout the year is really important, and having open lines of communication between the gen ed teacher, special ed teacher, mentors, to make sure that the student is getting what they need and is being successful, and also being held to high standards that are achievable and appropriate for them, but making sure that there's communication between and among everybody to make sure that the student is successful. And that's also where the opportunity for observations come in as well. This can be from the special ed teacher or the director of special education, and they can come in, do observations to see the pair in the classroom, and then it's an opportunity for feedback. So we gather the data from the observation, but also ask the gen ed teacher, how do you think the peer mentor and the peer pair is doing? Ask the peer who's receiving support. So ask the student who has the disability, how do you think it's going? How are there any questions that you have or anything we would like to see changed? Ask the mentor, how are things, the same questions. How do you think it's going? Is there anything that might need to change or work on that could help make this process better? And then also the director observation as well, just so we have data. And if there are any changes that need to be made, they can be made. And I will say this, we want the peer mentor pairs to work. Obviously, we want them to work. We are also working with humans, and we're working with teenagers, and some peer pairs just might not work. And for whatever reason, we want to try to troubleshoot, have some conversations, facilitate maybe a meeting with everybody together to work through it. But if it's still not working, sometimes a change needs to be made, and that's okay. Don't feel like it has failed if that happens. It's okay. So I just wanted to make sure that I said that very clearly too. If some changes need to be made, it's okay to make them. Obviously, that's not the goal that we're setting out to, but if need be, don't hold back. This is an example of a classroom teacher feedback form. The mentor communicates challenge and successes with me. So this is the gen ed teacher filling this out. Are they providing way too much support? Are they not providing enough support? And if it's really the 1 or the 10s, those should be conversations that should probably be happening before this time for the evaluation. But things happen, people get busy. It's another just data point to have if if there's not communication between the director or special ed teacher and gen ed teacher before this observation form. And I will leave us with some quotes from students who were part of a peer support arrangements. And that's what in this research study that I was reading, they called it a PSA, a peer support arrangements, but it was the same kind of setup as peer mentors. And what you can take away from these quotes is that they're not all going to go into special education. They are taking what they have, this experience that they have had, and are applying it to what they want to do in college and afterward, and taking that inclusive lens to their careers. So like I said before, like we don't need a world of special educators. Yes, we do need some more of them. So that's awesome if that's where some of them land, but we need people who are going to be in different career fields, who are inclusively minded, who have had experience with people with intellectual disabilities and are willing and able to make a more inclusive world. So when we have opportunities to start peer mentor programs at high schools, we are really opening the doors to allow neurotypical students to create a more inclusive world beyond their high school. So that I'm just wrapping up here right now. That is it for our final three-part webinar series. There is a live Q&A on September 24th. So I'll be back. So process all this, think about your questions, keep an eye out on social media for the Zoom link and the time, but it is going to be on September 24th. So come with questions, leave with answers. And if you have any questions in the meantime that you would like to talk about, or if you want to set up a time to chat and just kind of talk all things peer mentoring some more, don't hesitate to reach out. The bit.ly link is right there. It is case sensitive. And my email address is also there. So thank you all so much for joining this webinar series. And I hope to see you at the live Q&A in September. Thank you.